Welcome to the channel. Welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before getting into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with this actually that came from Samuel Lucas. He writes for the Sun. Sun, when you take with a pinch of salt, Samuel Lucas can be a shit stirrer sometimes, but he's still connected at the club and very annoying. But did a good piece regarding a huge summer clear out for Manchester United. So in the report, it says Manchester United are prepared to back Ruben Amorim with another clear out to fund the next phase of their squad rebuild. United plan to overhaul their midfield next year and could part finance their incomings with significant departures and sales. I'll go through a little bit around the report, but I'll go through the players individually in a second. So it says England international Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton's admired. It mentions Carlos Baleba in there as well, which we know that we're looking as the three main candidates for the midfield role. A new goalkeeper and a wide player also under consideration, though that will be partly dependent on the futures of loanees Vitek and Harry Amas, both doing really well on their loans respectively. So hopefully they can have a future at United. It says United could recruit more than one midfielder amid ongoing uncertainty over the futures of Bruno Fernandes and Kobbie Mainoo. Fernandes has an agreement that he can leave United for an overseas team for £57 million next year if he decides to end his Old Trafford career after 6.5 years. Mainoo's request to leave on loan in the summer transfer window was blocked, and he has yet to start a Premier League match this season. Obviously, there's still loads of question marks around Kobbie Mainoo. And then also interestingly says Amorim has criticised defensive midfielder Manuel Ugarte for his performances in training last week. Amorim admitted the £50.75 million Uruguay international is struggling. And then it goes on to say that United are privately targeting a top 6 finish in the Premier League this season, and their budget would be buoyed by European qualification. The club hope to make major savings on their wage bill, with the Cull saving a possible £2.1 million per week. So let's have a look at the list according to Samuel Luckhurst of exits. Now, this is actually, it seems a little bit far-fetched. There's 11 players on this list, which would be huge, but actually, most of them are out of contract anyway. So Casemiro on the list, out of contract. Bruno Fernandes, just mentioned in the report, does have a £57 million release clause for clubs outside of England for the summer. Let me know in the comments, because I think the debate is still to be had around should we not have just cashed in on Bruno Fernandes in the summer. I remember having this conversation with you in the comments. I still think it's a decision that Ruben Amorim's going to live and die by. The fact we could have got that £100 million for Bruno actually gone, because I think we would have used it to go for Carlos Baleba and maybe one other. Put in two midfielders with that money, still had the budget there to go out and get, Sesko and Mbeumo Cunha and Lemens. It wouldn't have made a difference because of a monetization. You could have potentially done that. And I know Baleba started the season bad for Brighton, but part of the reason for that is because he wants to come to United. It's a debate. It's a debate. Should we not have just done that and bit the bullet? Would we have been better off by doing that? Obviously, we don't know. Hindsight's always a wonderful thing when you look back on it as well. But there is an argument to say that actually the midfield's not really been not working effectively as it should be, and we are going to struggle in some games this season because of that sort of decision to play Bruno in the midfield next to Casemiro, who is about as quick as someone running through concrete in wellies. Like that's the reality of the midfield situation, isn't it? Anyway, I digress. Bruno Fernandes, but let me know in the comments. Do you think it was a mistake not getting rid of Bruno in the summer? Rashford we know is going to go anyway. Sancho's out of contract. Harry Maguire is out of contract. Manuel Ugarte mentioned in the report. I do think we'll look to get rid of Ugarte in the summer. Xerxes, we know obviously he's didn't cover himself in any glory the other night. I do have a little bit of sympathy though for him, because didn't have a pre-season, not played any foot. He's played 90 minutes of football and then thrown into the deep end. I think that's a mistake on the manager not giving him minutes up until now. But he still could do better than what we saw on the pitch from Xerxes. Hoyland we know is going to go anyway. He's got a obligation to buy from Napoli if they qualify for Champions League. Malasia's out of contract. Bayinda, don't really care. And Kobbie Mainoo, the other one on the list. So realistically, that's a plausible, that's not beyond the realms of it's possible, because half of them are out of contract. It's only Bruno, Ugarte, Xerxes, but there's obviously rumours of him going anyway. And Kobbie Mainoo, and Bayindir. So there's only 5 on the list that are actually in contract. All the rest are out of contract anyway, and it's said they're going to save there like £2.08 million per week in wages by the free transfers and moving on some players that probably should, probably come to the end of their time at United anyway. Let's say that. But what would that be in transfer fees though? Let's work it out quickly. So you've got, what would that be? Say 57 for Bruno. Rashford's 26, isn't he? Sancho's out of contract. Maguire's out of contract. Ugarte, what would he get for Ugarte? I'm going to say a 20 million based on his current form, the fact that he's not playing. Xerxes, a generous 25 maybe. Rasmus is 30, isn't it? I think, or around there. Malassia is free. Bayindir, who cares? Let's say 5 million. Kobbie Mainoo, what's Kobbie Mainoo worth at the moment? I think his value's gone down massively by the fact he's not playing. I think we'd be stretched to get, Garnacho money. What, 40 million maybe for Kobbie Mainoo? I'd sell him for a little bit more, but I'm not in charge of that. So you're talking about 203 million based on those generous figures. Obviously, we don't know until the summer comes, but that's 200 million pounds in transfers plus 2.1 nearly million pounds a week in savings. And again, I don't think it's as far fetched as as I don't think it's that far fetched because, like I said, half of the players are out of contract. Half of them we already know we're going to be selling anyway, and it's only really Mainoo, Bayindir, Xerxes, Ugarte, and Bruno. Only 5 players out of 11 that you could sell. And if you think like the one thing I would say though is, are we really going to sell all of our midfielders? I know we're looking to bring in 2. But is that why maybe they're looking to keep Casemiro or do something with Casemiro's contract? I would keep Kobbie Mainoo personally because I think he's still got bags of potential. But, are we really going to sell all 4 midfield players? I mean, I thought about that. But then I didn't think we'd sell all of our forwards. We literally sold every single forward he had at the club to rebuild the forward line. We obviously, Højlund's out on loan, but he's, as good as gone. Rashford, Garnacho, Anthony, Sancho, like we literally sold 5 forwards or got rid of or loaned out, 5 forwards to bring in the players that we did. So is it plausible that they would do the same with the midfield and just say, right, we're just going to get rid of the players we don't want to keep and bring in, 2 or 3? Got a Roscoe coming in as well. There maybe, if Kone goes out on loan, there's an update on him in a second. Bring him in as one of the other options. Who knows? Who knows? But it's an interesting talking point. 'Cause I know some of you from comments recently have been saying around having a big clear out and needing that open heart surgery that Ralph Ragnick talked about, and I do agree with that. I do think like players need to be held accountable. There needs to be consequences for underperforming at United. And if you keep rewarding players by keeping them and not putting them on the chopping block when they haven't performed, and remember, Barada's thing is over a 2-year period, and we finished 15th last season. I don't think anyone's got, you know, anyone's got like can have a pass from last season. So everyone's under the microscope already for me for last season, and then this season you go off of the performances and stuff. But yeah, give us your thoughts though, because the clear out, I think that's possible. Whether we would do it or not, who knows? But it's not as unrealistic, I don't think, as it first appears when you see 11 players are going to go, and you're like, well, hold on, that's a bit far fetched. The only thing I would say though to counteract that is I've heard it all before. I've heard all these stories around clear outs and big clear outs. We have it every transfer window. Going to have a massive clear out, and it never happens because nobody generally has the balls to make those sort of calls. And I just hope that we do now. I just hope that the board and the hierarchy and the recruitment team and everyone have now fed up with what we're seeing as well, or what we're being served up. Not all week, because obviously, we're all still. I'm still emotional anyway after the Everton loss, because it wasn't just the loss; it was the manner of the defeat. But before that, we were unbeaten in 5. But yeah, give us your thoughts and feelings on all of that in the comments below. Now let's go through. Obviously, we do go through that sort of variation of a clear out. We're going to need to recruit players. So United have actually brought in somebody to add to the backroom staff. So Manchester United are hiring Carl McCauley, the former Brighton and Hove Albion, Chelsea and West Ham United analyst, as their new head of senior scouting. McCauley, 39, has a strong reputation in the game and becomes the latest addition to a reshaped scouting department at Old Trafford. So this is coming from The Athletic. He says he's followed Potter to he's followed Potter to Swansea, as chief scout at Brighton, head of recruitment, and has been responsible for that period of Lissandro Trossard, Moises Caicedo, Matoma, Mark Cucurella, and Danny Welbeck on a free transfer, and then he's like been responsible for those sort of transfer dealings. So clearly a person that's got an eye for transfer targets and for bringing up for going for players really cheap that exceed their expectations and Brighton were a selling club anyway. They would have gone on and sold them for big money, but at United you would just keep them, I would hope anyway, unless you do get like a massive unrealistic offer from a team, in which case it's all profit and money for us, isn't it? But yeah. So Kyle McCauley, new head of scouting, will be in charge of the first team scouts, working with Christopher Vivel and Jason Wilcox, with INEOS trying to build data-driven and analytical approach when it comes to both scouting and recruitment. McCauley has plenty of experience in roles similar in the Premier League and is well known for identifying young talents from lower league, which United are looking to do more on moving forward. For example, Moises Caicedo to Brighton for £4 million back in 2021. So that came from Sully Talks as well, giving a bit of a background. So United are have recruited Kyle McCauley as the new head of scouting, and if he can find us a Moises Caicedo, a Cucurella, players of that they bought into Brighton and places, or Matoma for relatively cheap, that have their sort of potential, and that they're players that you would take those, all three of those, wouldn't you, at United right now? I would anyway, that's for sure. So hopefully working with Christopher Vivel, who's got connections and obviously got an eye for talent as well, that can only be positive. But we just need to, we're all impatient, aren't we? Like, I want everything done tomorrow and want this rebuild, as just mentioned as well. But it's going to take time, unfortunately. But yeah, give us your shouts and give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. But if we are going to have that clear out, we need to bring players in. We need recruitment, and none more so than the midfield. So Andy Mitten said the following on the Talk of the Devils podcast, saying, I mentioned Elliot Anderson a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely, Man United would love to sign him. It is obvious he's absolutely the player that Manchester United want. So Andy Mitten, doesn't normally get involved in like transfer talk, but he's very, very well connected. Probably one of the most connected journalists around, I think, at United. Been covering them for years. When he says something like that, it's clearly well sourced. So suggesting that Elliot Anderson is the one player that Man United want. He said something last week, I think it was on the podcast, a little bit tongue in cheek, but he followed it up in the podcast yesterday, saying that actually, yeah, he is the one that Man United are potentially going to go for. So, and I would be behind that all day long as well. Obviously, the other player that we are linked with in the midfield recently is João Gomes. Now, ESPN Brazil, so it's another South American outlet, saying that Manchester United want João Gomes and the idea is to sign him in January. So that's another South American source. And I can't remember whether there's a player in the summer that kept getting linked with us from South American reports. I can't remember if it was John Victor, the goalkeeper, or whether it was when Cunha was close to signing us, but there was all these reports from South American journalists that didn't turn out to be true. I'm pretty sure it was the John Victor one. So I do hold a little bit of skepticism regarding South American sources linking us with the player. But there's no smoke without fire. If you've got three of the biggest South American or Brazilian, places or reports or journalists or outlets, can't think of the word, suggesting that, João Gomes, that maybe there's something in that. And as I brought to you yesterday, David Ornstein didn't exactly dismiss the talk as well, but we'll have to just wait and see what happens regarding that. That's, that's plausible, I think, in January. Gomez just depends on whether we do want to make a move for him, and obviously what Wolves do and what position they're in then in the league as well, doesn't it? But we'll keep an eye on that one for you. Going back to Andy Mitten, though, his comments, he said, I've mentioned a few times the central midfield area is going to be a priority. I've seen it consistently. A couple of central midfielders and a defender, maybe depending on the market, another attacker from a wide position as well. So that's the potential viewpoint from United going forward, is what they would be looking to recruit: two midfielders, a defender, and then maybe another attacker as well, or like someone to play maybe at wing back as well. And going back to Samuel Lucker's first report, depending on he was suggesting goalkeeper and another wide player, depending on Harry Amas's development and VTech. So things are starting to maybe take place around what they are going to be looking at going forward. But obviously, there's plenty of football. Anything can change. We don't even know Amorim's future as well. Because I think if we don't get into Europe, I don't think he's going to be our manager in the summer anymore. That's the way. I think he's been tasked with. You need to get European football. That's reading between the lines, and that's been the sort of narrative all season, hasn't it? That we need to get back into Europe as well. But give us your shouts on that in the comments below. Now, let's go through a few of the exit news. So Diego León and Sekou Kone are among the young Manchester United players who could be loaned out in January, with Aidan Heaven's situation also expected to be reviewed. So that's came from Chris Wheeler and Nave Salt, suggesting that because of obviously the lack of minutes, that with no European football, we can't do much with a lot of the youngsters, and especially if the first team serving out turds like we saw at the weekend. We need to concentrate on that. Sending them out on loan is not the worst idea in the world, I don't think. Now, in terms of Leon, interestingly, there's been a report, I don't know the credibility of the source, saying that Diego León has chances of joining Nice on loan in January. So that could be one. I think our transfer ban has now finished from Nice to from us to Nice, because of obviously INEOS owning both, or being part owner of us and owning Nice. We got banned from doing transfers after the whole Tadibo shenanigans last year, wasn't it? So yeah, I wouldn't be against doing that again. Give him some first team minutes, give him some game time. Nothing wrong with that. And then another player that was mentioned on the sort of exit list, I suppose, was Joshua Zirkzee. Now the Gazette are saying that Roma have made an offer to Manchester United for Joshua Zirkzee. It is a loan with an option to buy that would become an obligation if the Italian side qualify for the Champions League. Zirkzee has said yes to the move and is now closer to joining Roma. And yeah, I have no dramas with that anymore. It would leave us a little bit light though, for January. I know he didn't exactly cover himself in glory against Everton, and I do have a bit of sympathy because he's not played any football, didn't have any pre-season. It's literally he's played 90 minutes of football before that game, thrown in at the deep end. He is going to be rusty, and it's going to take time. And I do blame Amorim for not giving him any sort of minutes in some of the other games this season, because he always wants to bring on centre halves and change the defence rather than giving Joshua Zirkzee some time to dust the cobwebs off. So I do have a little bit of sympathy there, but he's not the answer, is he? Let's be real. He isn't. I've wanted to see him and his link-up play with Mbumo and Cunha and stuff, but when I watched his performance against Everton, I was like, yeah, he's not the answer, is he? I don't think, to the problem. So yeah, if we get an offer for him in January, let's see what happens. But again, it's Italian media. They've been wrong loads, so I'll wait for a bit more credibility regarding that. But give us your shouts on that in the comments below. And there's been a little bit of more incoming talk. So this was interesting, coming from Rudy Galletti, who is someone that we do need to take with a pinch of salt, though, saying that Manchester United are keen on signing AS Roma right back Zeki Celik. Sources have told Team Talk, but the Red Devils are facing competition from Liverpool and Arsenal, among other clubs. Celik is out of contract at AS Roma at the end of the season, which has sparked interest from Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea and Manchester City. The 28-year-old Turkey international has been on the books of Roma since 2022 and has made 121 appearances for the Italian club, scoring 2 goals and giving us 7 assists in the process. Man City, Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool and Chelsea have made inquiries about Celik, confirming the high level of attention to the Turkey international. So that's interesting. Again, Rudy Gallet is one we do need to take with a pinch of salt, but he's suggesting that maybe some teams in the Premier League are making inquiries about Celik, who can play right wing back, right back as well. Very, here's a little bit more attacking than I think Mazraoui and Dallo down that side as well. Obviously, if we're in talks with Roma for Zirkzee, according to Italian media, could we put 2 and 2 together and do some sort of shenanigans in January? Who knows? I'd want to see a bit more credibility though regarding where that story's come from. Personally, it does say though in the report, from January, Celik is free to sign a pre-contract with another club for a summer move, which is why English teams are moving early to understand his availability and potential terms. So far, the contacts have been preliminary, focused on gathering information and assessing negotiation possibilities. So we're not in negotiations as such, maybe just putting the feels out to see salary, appetite to move, other teams, offers, all of that sort of jazz. So that's an interesting one. We'll keep an eye on it for you, but I don't know whether we would be going for like a 28-year-old, but then on a free if he's a free transfer in the summer or a cheap January deal, who knows? Who knows? We'll keep an eye on that one for you, but give us your shouts on that in the comments below. Now, this was interesting. Doesn't say where the stories come from, though. I read it in the Manchester Evening News, saying that while it is recently reported that Manchester United are looking at RB Leipzig's Asan Awi Adrogo, it is suggested that the club are now paying attention to Castello Lukeba. The 22-year-old Frenchman has impressed in the Bundesliga after making the move from Lyon in 23, and a move could be facilitated by his reported release clause. Chelsea, Real Madrid, and Liverpool have also been linked with the star, but it doesn't say in the Manchester Evening News where that story's come from. But that is a player. We've been linked with the keeper a few times as well. Do think he's a good player. Don't know whether we would be, you know, looking to bring in his left-footed, so left-sided centre half. But then it depends on what happens with Shaw and Martinez, doesn't it? Because I think that, Martinez gets injured again, heaven forbid. Question marks over his long future at the club. I think he's out of contract in a year as well, or he might be coming into the last sort of 18 months of his contract. And Luke Shaw, is Luke Shaw, isn't it? So potentially, I wouldn't be against going for someone like Lukeba that could give us that, pace and aggression, and he's a good player. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. But like I said, it doesn't say where the story is sourced from, so we'll keep an eye on that one for now, and bring you any updates if they come out as well. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.